The weary traveler draws close to the end of the path.
We have never had it so good.
All of this just works.
We are selling tea to China.
You did not have to redeem this, ma'am!
Out with them, forget about them.
Your broadcast is very biased. You've written a lot of ridiculous articles, so I would encourage you to be more journalistic and have more integrity.
Socialism is when the government does stuff.
Hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of the Longhouse, the weekly show for the sensible centrist. It's been another week. It's been a crazy week, I guess, in the news to a certain extent. It's tossed a lot of things up in the air, which we have talked about, sort of things changing, things coming in the online right, as you will. But some lines seem to have been drawn in the sand, and yet at the same time, not a lot happened at all. So, what's the scene in No Country for Old Men, where he's like, where he makes the bet with the coin, but it's like, so did a lot happen or did nothing happen? You have to call it.
Call it.
Call it. Yeah. Letting Path, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing well. What's the meme from they make the Chud Jack edit from Casino Royale with the Mads Mikkelsen character?
Oh yeah.
The chief. What is it, Mr. Bond? Something happens. I'm all in. Nothing happens. It's a weird dichotomy. Everything and nothing happens at the same time. There's just a lot of stuff that is being compressed into a short amount of time. Many people are, of course, running to cover it. So I know that we have a sort of certain audience intersection between other creators, and because I really don't want to just rehash things that you probably already heard, then we have to take things in a slightly different direction. So I mean, it's the weather has been fantastic, with the consequence that it's harder to sleep. So I'm in a little bit of a deficit, and now we have to do all of these kind of data heavy topics. So I'm glad we have some articles that we can lean back on. The things that I wanted to do is just go follow up on the tariff stuff that we talked about last week. You had an article about home births in Norway, so we have some local stuff. And after that, I actually wanted to talk about American drug use, and not just fentanyl, but the other stuff. I mean, it's been a while since I've talked about psychedelics, but it's a thing that's it keeps coming back up. You know, I had a certain intuition really about the prevalence, and that part of the reason why I think the American right, the way that it has emerged, and the MAGA right, is the way that it is because of very large amounts of psychedelic drugs that's being used recreationally. And I've looked at a couple of articles and some stats, and it turns out that there's actually something to it. You know, it's something that I actively just try to ignore because I feel, it's like you don't feel cool complaining about drugs. I don't think anybody does that. It feels grandmotherish, backwards in a sense. But at the same time, I just keep it. It just keeps showing up with so many of these creators that just make these references to their ayahuasca trips. Psilocybin, these retreats that they're going on, and I mean, I feel like there has to be some common thread here with the sort of brain melting that you're watching in real time, and the heavy recreational drug use. But that's going to be for later. I think we could start with some lighter stuff. Maybe you could bring up the.
Before we head into Norway, let's take a quick sort of side tour. This might come up later, but. The other day it was announced that, or actually yesterday it was announced that founder Klaus Schwab is to step down as the World Economic Forum's chair. Chuds everywhere are celebrating, I assume. The World Economic Forum founder Klaus Schwab will, quote, start the process of stepping down as chair of its board of trustees, according to a spokesperson for the Geneva-based institution told Reuters Thursday. Schwab said the forum, which convenes annual gatherings in the Swiss resort of Davos, must recover its sense of mission after a period of turmoil, citing a letter to trustee board members and confirmation by two people with knowledge of the situation. He's not given a timeline, but at sometime before January 2027. And of course, no successor has been appointed yet, although people have been previously pointing fingers at one of the Norwegian delegates, actually. So that'll be interesting to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I think Børge Brenne, isn't that who is like next in charge or something? I think he's the natural successor to this position. At least we read some article about this previously.
Yes, the eternal Norwegian strikes again, and our world domination will be complete.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about like nothing ever happens, right? The sort of cute hard coverage of this is like, well, Klaus Schwab steps down after 5 years of anti-American crusading, and this is a huge blow against globalism by Donald Trump. But nothing ever happens. It's just always funny. Like,
the WEF,
yes,
the WEF
Klaus
will
Schwab.
continue to do WEF stuff. Unfortunately,
Klaus Schwab is dead, but,
depending on where you are. Sorry,
nothing really changed.
Yep.
Which I mean, I've made the point on Twitter, but I will make it again. Out of all of these sort of globalist bogeymen that are being circulated, I feel George Soros made sense, and he continues to make sense, especially from like the American perspective, as the kind of like you have like one bogeyman that sort of represents the whether they think of it as the deep state, like the NGO complex, the sort of liberal creep, like, whatever, the liberal big money behind things, because there's something to that, right? I mean, we covered Soros previously and sort of his mission to kind of, I mean, most of what the Open Society Foundation was set up to do was really just trying to establish former Soviet bloc countries as Western liberal democracies. But he basically at some point figured out that his money was better spent fighting republicanism in the United States. So if you're of that persuasion, you can sort of see why he's the kind of natural devil. But Klaus Schwab is a sort of figure that just emerged during the COVID stuff. I had not heard of him before that. Like, nobody knew who I was until I put on the Bond costume. But
yeah.
I mean, essentially, what is the guy? He has held a conference for 50 years.
He wrote
whose purpose.
Fourth Industrial Revolution, which a lot of people have cited. A lot of the... I know we've dunked on Harari before, but a lot of sort of that crowd really likes the Fourth Industrial Revolution.
Yeah, I mean, they've written books about stuff that they want to see done and the kind of visions that they have for the future, but the anti-Americanism isn't really a feature of this, because the WEF is really, it's sort of quite the opposite. It's an organization that was created with the explicit purpose of Americanizing Europe, really. They looked at American business in the 70s and just looked at European business and like, okay, we wish we could be more like that, as so much of European leadership has been, probably until quite recently. And it's like, okay, why can't we have this huge GDP growth the same way the Americans does, and then trying to implement stuff like infrastructure, like cross-border policy that allows markets to thrive in Europe. And that's been kind of the point. I mean, if you read the Fourth Industrial Revolution, it's really about how can we optimize like GDP growth through just setting up more infrastructure for like digital, AI and stuff like this, 5-minute cities, just so we can have like 8%.
It is a bit
GDP,
of like a world leader, solar punk circle jerk kind of thing. At one level, at the other level, it's probably a great opportunity for networking, right?
Yeah, I mean, of course, there's that aspect as well. As there's a lot of sort of grift complex to the WEF, but the sort of the idea that like it exists to stop Donald Trump or something like that. It's pure kind of fantasy that I think a lot of people made up in their heads. Like with the you will eat the bugs and live in the pod he never said any of that. But that's the thing. It's like it's really funny, but like Klaus Schwab never actually said anything like that. So I mean that's just a bit of a digression. But now that we're on the point,
the
that's
WEF
just kind of
did say you will
my
own nothing and be happy in their
yeah, they did release an essay about renting everything as a service essentially. So that is from them, but the eating the bugs and living in the pod stuff is not.
All right,
it's not.
so in Norway this week, there's been a heated debate about what Americans call free birthing or home birth. Essentially, a woman having a baby at home without the assistance of a what's that in English? You know, the woman who helps
Midwife?
birth your baby. A midwife, yes. Without the assistance of a midwife, and when I say midwife, I mean like a certified. They're not doctors, but they have like a mid-level medical degree specifically for delivering children and training, of course. And one woman, I'll bring her up quickly because this made it to the national news show. I say show. It's actually like the national news that's on every day. And this woman and a doctor, who I'll feature in a moment, had a debate. She is obviously a pro women doing free births at home. The doctor is saying, why are you just adding risk unnecessarily? And do you want to read this woman's sort of response to the incident, or do you want to read the doctor's first? I think it's best to read the doctor first.
Yeah, maybe.
Because I think she's responding to him. Let's see here.
When you say like American free birth movement, I just think about Lynyrd Skynyrd. You could probably make like a parody version of it, like the free birth,
like the baby just flying out of
as free
the
as a
mother.
birth now.
Yeah. All right. So here we have the doctor, Mr. Kaveh Rashidi, who is one of those like he's managed to. There's like two doctors in Norway who's like TV doctors, I guess, who sort of a part of their image is that they're like Pakistani or Iranian or something, and they're a doctor. Do you see what I'm saying? Like that's kind of their shtick.
Yeah, I mixed them up. I thought
I do
he
too.
was going to be the darker one, but this guy is more white passing, I guess.
The other guy is browner. That's true.
Yeah, the other guy is more brown, and he talks about Palestine more. So I follow the other guy on Twitter. So he just
this guy's more
complains about
liberal
Israel.
coded. Yeah.
Yep.
So he's saying, for the first time in the existence of humanity, women can give birth with virtually zero risk of death or lasting pains. In Norway, you get the best maternity help in the world for absolutely free. Well, I mean, citation, or I guess editorializing a bit here, you don't get it for free, you pay tax. Nevertheless, environments are emerging online that actively encourage women to opt out of this. Untruths are spreading, camouflaged as a romanticization of the strength of the female body. The free birth movement describes births as a natural experience and asks women to trust their bodies. But remember, nature has no intention of ensuring that all children and mothers survive. So here's a screenshot from, I guess, Instagram or something with the tag free birth. And you can see, there's a certain type of women that are doing this, obviously.
If you had just shown me this, if you had just shown me this without context, I would have thought it was some kind of parody stuff or like AI generated. It's not that I think
make me a crunchy woman, kind of. Yeah.
I'm not just opposed to it by itself, but there's just so many of these kind of like wacky things that they seem to invent. So, but let's hear what it's about.
If nature is allowed to run its course, as it has for millions of years, a sky-high number of children and mothers will die during childbirth. Imagine a group of people who require driving a car without strapping a seatbelt on their child, who demand driving a car without strapping a seatbelt on their child. They would argue, well, I mean, those people exist as well in America, right? For some reason, a lot of these like free citizen types are really against seatbelts. There's some sort of
there's
like
been a
libertarian history about
big
this.
libertarian gripe on that for
Yeah.
a while. So
They argue that they have never been involved in an accident, that they only drive on the small roads, and that they have the safest cars on the market. And they're probably right that most car trips will go smoothly. But anyway, it is madness. Driving and giving birth are not the same thing, though, but the example tells a point. Laws are needed to protect the child from unnecessary risk. Professionals and researchers agree that this is risky for the child, although it often ends up going smoothly. We already use the law to protect unborn children from alcohol, from drugs, and from violence. To forbid free birth is a natural extension of the same principle. Such a law has never before been necessary because people have been happy to be able to get help from health professionals. But things have changed, and emergency services report an increased number of call-outs to women who choose to give birth at home without the help of a midwife. Children have lost their lives. But is it possible to understand the arguments for carrying out a free birth? Free birth advocates refer to the woman's rights over her own body, but those rights stop where the child's rights start, and we're sort of into abortion territory here.
This one is tricky, right? Because I assume that a lot of the women who are into this stuff are like really hardcore anti-abortion as well.
Maybe.
Probably
Yeah.
on the grounds of like the rights of the child. But then you're getting into this kind of iffy territory here. But it's like, well, hypothetically, if you'd had like a midwife or some kind of intervention, you could have saved the child, and you basically chose not to do that. So so it's like, okay, it's like the woman's rights versus the child's right again. It's tricky. I'm actually excited to read on.
We have to take into account the risks of giving birth unassisted, especially when we know that 1 in 10 Norwegians believe that unassisted home birth is safe. Many people who want to give birth, so 10% of Norwegians believe that this is safe. Many people who want to give birth at home describe a distrust of healthcare, doctors and midwives. It's not as safe as in hospitals, or that you are over-treated, or you get a standard treatment that is not adapted for the individual. Yes, public birth care has its challenges, and you can read that in a lot of papers. There's a lot of sort of like horror stories about, women having bad experiences giving birth at public hospitals. But as someone who's recently gone through a birth at a public hospital, Mrs. Walrus was given a lot of good care that was very much sort of individualized to her needs. So not that she needed any special treatment, but just taking into account her as a person, right?
Yeah, that was my experience as well, going through that, and I will do it again this summer. So I'll see if it repeats. Right. But I was actually surprisingly, I came in being sort of skeptical about the service we would get, but it overperformed my expectations. That's all I can say.
Yeah, a lot of the public health stuff has a tendency to either be, when it's these like one-off things, I say one-off, but these like sort of in and out kind of things, and not like chronic illnesses. Public health tends to do really well, unless it doesn't, and then it really does badly, right? So when you get the horror stories, it's the outliers, I think.
Yeah, and I actually think that we benefited from, like, say, low birth rates, actually, because there's less pressure on these departments in the hospital. It's just less people giving birth at the same time.
We had the opposite, because we were in like the high period.
Oh, I see.
But we did. There were like ups and downs, and when it mattered, we had a lot of people on hand. So it turned out well. If you have a deep fear of health personnel, or you have experienced trauma, we need to improve maternity care and not remove it. I'm not gonna play the birthing video on stream. I hope you can find that on your own time if you're watching this. I understand that banning something is difficult in practice. I understand that banning something is quite difficult in practice, but it takes wiser minds than mine to get this from an idea to reality. And of course, I fear that strict laws will create more fear than security. My nightmare is that mothers will still choose to give birth at home without health professionals with them. But when it But when the rubber meets the road, they won't dare to call for help out of fear of being punished. So it's one of those like reverse. We're getting into abortion territory again here, with the argument being, you know, if you ban abortion, then more illegal abortions will happen and women will die, right?
Yeah, or maybe like some of these like arguments around, you know, drugs and drug users. So like if it's partially penalized, then people are not going to seek out help. It's sort of the same thing.
At the same time, we have to think in several tracks. Hey, it's the based Longhouse saying of keeping two thoughts in your head at once. It's very hard, but you should try it sometimes. We have to understand the women who choose to do this, strengthen information work that is provided during pregnancy, and build confidence in our public health care. We must be able to think two thoughts at the same time, support the women, but set a limit to when the child's life is at stake. The right of children's health is more important than the desire of their parents for freedom. Now that's a bit of a controversial take, but I think this is going to be like a split between Europeans and Americans, in a sense. There's just difference in our sort of nature that has a tendency to sometimes just make us opposite and stuff like this. This is a message we must send clearly and decisively to all parents. The signal effect of banning unassisted home births can mean a lot, especially at a time when social media is overflowing with self-appointed experts who are influencing insecure parents to make bad choices. Medical is abundantly clear that no matter how healthy you are, births are unpredictable and dangerous. And yes, from every thing I've read, you know, in the run-up to Baby Walrus's birth, I mean, you never know with births. And that's why you have midwives, right? Because they usually, you know, take the risk from like, oops, both you and the baby are going to unfortunately perish, to, oh, well, we just have to do this, right?
Yeah, I think your odds of succeeding are a lot better with help. I think history shows that as well. I mean, even societies.
And I'm going to be interested in seeing this woman, because I remember watching, she made some very strange sort of arguments on the news show, and we won't play that because it's Norwegian. One of them was that, you know, the baby, in a sense, is violated during birth when they are helped out of the mother. Like if the midwife touches the baby, that is a form of violation. I'm not going to say the R word, but that's essentially what she was saying.
It's a non-aggression principle. Non-aggression principle against the baby, essentially, that's violated by the midwife.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
But it's one of those things where I'm going to be interested to see how she's going to be able to sort of justify this, because it's one of those things where you can't really make a perennial argument, because if you make a perennial argument about this, then midwives have been a thing for a long time. Right.
Yeah. Even in you go to poorer societies that just live on, like, even in absolute poverty, they still have people who work as midwives to try to help you out, even like with primitive tools, because of the risk. Pretty much, it is historically just a risky thing, even if you are healthy.
It is.
Though I have seen cases of like women who have done this that have turned out fine. I think it's, but I mean, these are people I know who are like Christian fundies, right? And this was like her 5th kid or whatever. So I guess it's a little bit.
But at that point, it's like a highway, right? You can just slide right out.
Yeah, it took her like 90 minutes or whatever. She just woke up in the morning and then the kid was born later. But I think if it's like your first time or something, it's a little bit, because usually like the first birth takes a lot longer. The body's not adapted to it. We were at the hospital almost like 12 hours for the birth. So for some people it's even longer. I think that would be quite difficult and traumatic if you're going to do it by yourself in the bathroom or something. But yeah.
All right. Suddenly you end up bleeding too much. The baby's shoulder is stuck, or the baby itself just doesn't want to come out. If a midwife is present, professional assessments are made continuously, which only we as health care personnel are competent enough to do. These complications are not rare, and daily we see in the health service that lives could have been lost, that lives that would have been lost are saved, thanks to the fact that the health professional is present during childbirth. My own son was born a few weeks ago and is an example of this. He came out blue, purple, and lifeless, even though his mother was healthy and without risk. We don't know what would have happened if we had given birth at home without a healthcare professional present, but we are overjoyed that they came running and made him breathe again. I care about women's rights, which is something that just happens sometimes when you give birth. Like the baby will come out and it'll just not be breathing, and you have to basically start the machinery in a certain way. I care about women's rights, bodily autonomy, and a wide range of food and health care that adapts to the individual's needs, but not at the expense of the lives of children. Anyone who chooses unassisted birth does so because they want a safer and better birth. Their choice is unfortunately based on misinformation. There is nothing safe, noble, or women liberating in depriving your child of access to a healthcare provider. This is just the biggest luxury problem in history. The debate is not about freedom against prohibition, about feminism, or how to optimize our food supplies. It's a matter of life and death, and we as a society must do our duty, protect children from parents who make bad choices. It is a very bad choice to plan a birth without a health professional presence. So I think this one is interesting because if you recall back to our episode when we did a review of a documentary about the police having a hard time policing cousin marriages. Do you remember that? And the reason the police has a hard time policing cousin marriages is because these families don't respect the child protective services, right? They essentially just don't respect the law. They place the family higher than they place the Norwegian judicial system, and then the police is just powerless to do something because they'll just lie and say no, everything is fine. And this is kind of like the same thing. Like we've given child protective services the ability to take children away from parents, but when it mattered, they couldn't do it. And so now we're back here at the same sort of argument that we have to protect children from parents who make bad choices. The question is, are we able to do that? Are we able to follow up on it?
What's interesting for me is I'm wondering if there's a long history of this free birth stuff. Do you know about that, or is this some new stuff that they've come up with? Like, let's say, sure. Evangelical women in the U.S. Like 100 years ago would have like they did this stuff, or is this some like podcast thing, like the guys who stop showering and just rub salt on their bodies or do cold punches? Is it like the equivalent for women? Because it's kind of the vibe that I'm getting here. It's really some kind of like a status symbol inside of like a niche community that you did it without. You could do it yourself. Like you didn't have to. I stopped using toothpaste or I stopped using deodorant.
Put it like this: it looks like the website that promotes this stuff in Norwegian was started in 2023. The podcast seems to go back to, let me see here. It goes back to around the same time, I think. We're getting into 2024 is the podcast. This woman is the woman we're about to get into. She started her podcast in 2024.
Yeah, okay, so it's
about
not
a year ago, actually.
So it doesn't sound to me like it's some kind of religious, some deep religious traditional thing, or it's some.
There might be some overlap with there's like these like Wiccan pagan women, right? Who do like weird stuff in the woods. There might be some overlap there, but this specifically seems to have sort of entered from the sideline, and I can't remember this being a thing for a long time. And at this point, maybe I should just throw it out there, because I've been like workshopping a thing on you this week in our private chats, is that to understand what's like the world around me, I feel like I need to split the difference between American and European woke, to be able to sort of like understand the differences here, because this like free birth thing is something that I would term like American woke, right? Meanwhile, a lot of the European stuff that we call woke these days is kind of just, would you say, like social or like culturally liberal values that we've had for a long time that we for some reason have to enshrine in law. And we're doing that either because of things like mass immigration, or we're doing it because because of American woke, right? So BLM obviously isn't a European woke thing. But let's say Norway this week did a refresh of their consent laws, saying that, they went like really hard line on saying yes. Essentially, well, the debate is, does this make it easier to make false violation allegations, right? And this would be something I would say is Norwegian or European woke, right? Because this is just, well, I mean, we're a liberal nation. We're not about doing sexual violations. That's not something we do. But apparently society has regressed to the point where we're going to have to enshrine this in law now, right? Meanwhile,
I guess it's tricky to deal with as well for the I guess like the sort of Twitter, social media right wing crowd, because I saw the same thing that they were complaining about it. Well, at the same time, they also talk about immigrant grape, Muslim grape statistics and stuff like that. So like maybe, as you say, like the reason they even have to put that in the law in the first place is because of stuff like this in particular. But
because of American feminism, for example, right?
Yeah.
Which is American woke. Because this wasn't a problem before. It was just implicit, right? I'm not saying there wasn't instances of sexual violence that we've never had problems with, but it wasn't a problem on the societal level where we didn't understand that this is bad, right?
I mean, there's just so many things that have happened that really makes me want to revisit like the 2010s and like the emergence of 2010 woke culture, and so maybe just do a timeline of exactly, this is where like the humongous incident happens, and this is like when they screw with the video games, and here is George Floyd dies. So
I'm gonna try to talk to when I go to the Karlstage. I think Carl Benjamin is going to be there, and I know that he's done a lot of reading on like feminist literature to be able to like, pull up the receipts, as it were. And I'm gonna have to talk to him about this to see if there's some sort of
one of
map
my
here.
larger questions is that my impression, but I'm just going through my own mental footprint here, is that there was like this huge surge in feminism that was about bodily autonomy and like this kind of what they call grape culture. That was their tagline, grape culture. And,
I mean, sort of like a reaction to, we covered the sewer culture of the mid 2000s, right?
Yeah, but I'm not sure if how much of it was just kind of feminists inside their own echo chamber radicalizing each other, or how much of it was a reaction to actual culture that was in decline outside of it.
Because that's the interesting part when you watch like old what was the video games thing, her Anita Sarkeesian. Yeah, you watch her videos, and if a lot of the examples she's using from like games, she's like really contriving situations to make things look worse than they are, which is one of the critiques, right? She got, which makes me think that she wants this to be true, but it's not as true as her peers make it seem to be. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's the thing too. Like one of the reasons that I was against it, aside from the fact that it's sort of infringing on the territory on the stuff like gaming and stuff that you like, but also that they seem to be kind of just spinning up their own reality and radicalizing themselves and sort of demanding legislation follow a lot of this made up stuff that they're living in. But at the same time, it would be interesting to maybe just revisit that and see if there was some statistics, some news stories, like were they actually reacting to real stuff that was happening? Because I'm sort of open to that idea as well, that maybe the culture was just getting worse at that point, like in terms of relations, in terms of decency standards, consent standards, drugs and so on, that it was just a kind of something like that, or that people were just getting more sensitive or more sort of conscious of boundaries at that point, or like what I thought in the beginning is that they made it up. Essentially, they're like these, like the feminist women are just trying to get attention. They're making up all this kind of stuff, and because the culture is it's trending directionally in their direction anyway, and so it seems like they're just kind of exploiting a trend to bring the attention onto themselves. That's kind of, that's how I feel. I don't know if that's true.
Says, Ludwig, please don't become an Anita Sarkeesian contrarian. I don't think Ludwig is going to become an Anita Sarkeesian apologist, but it's about seeing what the situation maybe actually was rather than what we felt like it was back then.
But I do imagine I might be able to look at some of her videos and see like maybe one of them actually had a point. And like with this sort of video game stuff, I think it'd be easier for me. I'd be less emotionally invested in that if they're like,
but it's sort of
about
the same. But it's sort of the same thing here as well. It's like, should women be allowed to just say no to the medical sort of system because some people are having a bad experience? Like that's essentially the same argument, right?
Yeah, I see.
Should we condemn all video gaming men because some of them say mean things online, right?
Yeah, I see. But I was thinking about stuff like, let's say this kind of thirst culture in video games, stuff like do you remember Dead or Alive beach volleyball, or like?
Actually, kind of a friend of mine gifted that to me at some point. I never played it. It was like sitting in like a drawer. Yeah. And the thing is, I mean, even if I wanted to, right, to play it because of, the obvious reasons, the gaming console was like in the middle of the living room, and my dad would have to watch me play Dead or Alive beach volleyball, which I wouldn't be caught dead doing. Right?
Are you winning, son?
So I have owned that game. I have never played it. It's still probably in the wrapper somewhere in my attic or something.
You wake up at night and you walk in on your dad playing the game. You never speak of it again.
Yeah.
I mean, for the audience, or maybe too young for this, like Dead or Alive is like a fighting game, franchise that was on the Xbox. And I assume maybe it was on some other consoles as well. But yeah, like many of these fighting games, they have scantily clad women, and they released a sort of spin-off game that was called Dead or Alive Beach Volleyball, which essentially it's like, there's some gameplay where you can actually do the volleyball, but that was completely uninteresting. It's like these women, you could sort of put them in these scantily clad bikinis and then move the camera around like a drone or something, and you can just zoom in on various angles. And like the whole thing was just sort of peep show. Like you just put these, like you're playing with sleeping dolls or something. So, but that was the thing, and I understand why you can have a debate and a discussion around those things, and sort of development of Coomer indulgence in the aughts.
Yeah. Let's see here. Let me bring up the. Do we have time to go over this woman's response?
Maybe we can do a TLDR version of it.
Let's do a TLDR. I'll read this fast. So she's going to respond here. Unfortunately, there are many who are as judgmental and condescending as Kawe Rashidi. That's not an argument, though. Honoring the late great
Stefan
Molyneux. Yeah. We talked about him last week, I think. I was the counter-debater to Dr. Kaveh Rashidi at Daytime 18 after he wrote in a paper that I should be made punishable for women. It should be made punishable for women to give birth unassisted. He is wrong. And she says, I'm in the middle of court. I am sort of the core demographic here. Obstetric violence, which is essentially any sort of mistreatment during birth, is, according to research, one of the reasons why women give birth unassisted. If we remove this form of violence, for example, in the form of punishment for those who practice it, that's not the same thing. A punishment for practicing it is not the same thing as you having a bad experience doing it, but whatever. We would help prevent women from being put in a situation where they would rather plan to give birth unassisted than give birth with health professionals. I feel like we're already off to like women arguing here, right? It's kind of like, yeah, but that's not, if you made me feel safe, I wouldn't cut myself or something, right? It's like, yeah, but if you cut yourself.
Let's just see where this goes.
Yeah. It's not about this one woman's statement about abuse, like Rashidi points out in another paper. After the news show, messages have hailed in on my social media from many women who are grateful and say that finally someone dared to put into words what they themselves have experienced. The truth is that our society has lacked a language for the violence that many people experience. After I used the word grape about my experience, consciousness exploded all around, and the denial of the public consciousness exploded, and we were made aware of the denial of obstetric violence. Subjective words of experience that underlie the term are now being used more. It is not noise, they're facts. You literally said they're subjective. Like a sentence ago. Let me just check the... Yeah, no. Okay. Maybe it is a movement too. Obstetric violence is a major problem worldwide. The term is recognized by the United Nations and the World Health Organization. It is they who experience the violence who have the power of definition of what they experience, not health professionals. The court has ruled that the choice of how and where the mother wants to give birth is part of a woman's privacy. Well, yes, but that was never in question. It is protected under the European Convention on Human Rights, Article 8. The mother has the right to freedom of choice in childbirth. Personal autonomy is a fundamental principle that implies the right to decide over one's own body. Human rights state that the state has a responsibility to protect the individual's right to privacy, and the state should ensure legal framework to enable it freedom of choice in childbirth. Well, but not necessarily freedom of choice from having a healthcare professional there. Like, these are two different definitions. I dare to argue that the state does not ensure enough options for women in Norway when home birth with a midwife is not part of the public offer, and when delivery rooms are closed down all over the country, are being closed down all over the country. Now, that's true. I mean, we are closing down delivery rooms because we're centralizing a lot of it because everything is losing money, and we're doing austerity stuff, which sucks. But yeah, hopefully you should, prepare more, I guess, before birthing. The state must also ensure that women who wish to give birth unassisted shall not be met with condemnation, violation, or threats of violence. I have experienced myself being exposed to this during the recent debate. With clear guidelines and safeguarding our rights, the state could have contributed to a different debate climate. Rashidi has changed his mind about prohibition, but now he proposes to introduce a duty of notification against free birth. What he wants is coercion and against consent-competent women. Consent-competent women. That sounds like a phrase she has learned online. I'm a bit biased here, but let me just check. Yeah, consent-competent women. Sounds like a strange word.
I'm reading a bit about this sort of obstetric violence on... Yeah, there's a website called pregnancy-birth-baby.org.au. And it's just relating to kind of like the human rights you have enshrined as a woman. And they're talking about like, okay, well, it's really about the sort of consent in the sense and stuff that's happening during birth. Like you say, they give you pain relief without consent, or they refuse to give you pain relief when you want consent, or you get bullied or something, or they try to hector you into doing something you don't want, or you get exposed in ways that's painful. Maybe you have your baby taken away from you without consent. Like, it's really like it goes both ways. It's sort of both about like, okay, I want you to give me painkillers, and I want you to give me a caesarean section, and you're being refused that, or it's about just people who are sort of trying to give you that stuff, but when you don't want it, really. So it seems like
sure.
like this kind of
it sounds like a very complicated thing to do, like either or, because it's very much up to the people in that situation and the healthcare professionals. Now, from my experience with Baby Walrus, I mean, obviously the hospital doesn't really want to go to a cesarean section right away, because that leads to a whole other potential host of complications. So obviously they want to try to have you do a natural birth first. So a woman who rolls into the hospital saying that she wants a cesarean section is going to get a no, right? Is that violence?
Well, I think so, actually. Like At least when I'm reading this, I'm getting into the mind space of these women, when she's using that term like hyper consent focused or something. That because I was thinking that this is some
But
some
could you
like
argue
female,
that that situation could like violate the Hippocratic Oath or something? Because you would potentially be doing more harm by not doing it in the sort of proper order.
yeah, that's always an issue. I think when you're a doctor,
Yeah.
is that okay, well, if you watch these medical shows like House MD or what are some other good ones, Scrubs or
Yeah.
something like that. It's kind of you're always dealing with this kind of consent problem, or what about people who don't want help when you know that they need it? And like I guess part of being an expert is that you have to just tell people they're
Know
wrong
when.
sometimes.
Yeah.
Even though you might not be respecting their boundaries or something.
Sure. I guess it's it's difficult. Let's see here. If we're going to talk about the case of the children, we need to talk about what's actually best for the children. The way I see it, the best thing for a baby is to undergo a birth undisturbed and natural. Once the baby what does that mean though? I mean, any way you slice it, I wouldn't argue that birth is undisturbing for the baby. It's probably in a sense highly traumatic, right?
Yes.
Once the baby has come out, the most optimal thing to do is to preserve the connection to the placenta, skin-to-skin stimulation from the mother, and to begin breastfeeding. Well, everyone agrees on that, so this is not what we're debating. In peace and quiet. Again, no one's debating this, as nature intended. I am talking about healthy mothers and babies. I guess she's making a concession here. Money prevails. Healthcare is not a good in itself, and it does not achieve any health promotion. Let me just double check. Yeah. Having access to interventions also make them overused. Cascade of interventions is a famous expression in the world of birth. Healthcare professionals create the problems they later have to solve. Healthcare can provide iatrogenic injuries. Now that is true. I mean, you can sort of like over medicalize the situation and induce sort of stress in the mother and make everything more difficult. So it's a difficult tightrope, but you're also implying that the healthcare professionals aren't aware of this, right? Which I'm sure they are, and they have training for this. Now, maybe I'm putting too much faith in the midwives of the country, but in my experience, they seem to have a good idea of sort of when to step in and when to back off. Let's see here. In this debate, we should not ignore the damages healthcare professionals do against women and children. And what about deaths? It must also be included when discussing the law and the ethical moral of this. Healthcare providers receive harsher penalties if they violate a guideline than if they violate the law. This includes the midwife that Katharina Trulsvik told the nation about. This is about something else. Many midwives have told me that they feel pressured to make interventions, meaning that they're pressured to intervene during childbirth for fear of losing their authorization and their livelihood. But if they do a vaginal examination without consent, which is illegal, then nothing happens with their authorization and livelihood. Well, that depends on the situation, doesn't it? I mean, if a vaginal examination is required and the mother is unable to consent, but you have to do it to save the life of the baby, I think that's something that a lot of medical professionals would agree is all right, albeit unfortunate, right?
And this woman sounds like a nightmare to deal with for medical professionals, honestly. Maybe she should just give birth by herself. I think,
you do you, buddy.
I can't I can't deal with this. Please, like, I mean, if
let's just stop. I'm done.
I think you get the picture. I mean, at least for her sake, you get the impression that it's really maybe about like bad experience, distrust, and sort of hyper awareness around rules and things. So, I was thinking more that this was like some female equivalent of the guys who were posting this. I'm eating and drinking 12 raw eggs every day.
I was thinking that too. Yeah,
but it
was much more neurotic, right?
Yeah, it was very neurotic.
Okay. So, do we want to do tariffs?
Yeah, you have the one article. Maybe we could rest on that because
do.
there's been so much that's been happening. I mean, just guess as a summary.
We have more articles, but I think this one is good enough.
From like last week's episode, last time.
Yeah.
I mean, so he pulled out the tariff chart, and we went through it with all these kind of oddities. I mean, later there's some information that's come out suggesting that like the actual number of the claimed tariffs that Trump is claiming is it's because of trade deficits, right? He has a mathematical formula where he's multiplying the trade deficit with something else and dividing it by total imports or exports or something. Maybe you could look that up. In the background.
Because I'll find it, because it was something strange about that formula.
Yeah, it didn't reflect actual tariffs, right? Because you could read that. That's a public which things are tariffs and which things are not tariffs from these countries. So it's like if you have some just like some blank number, yeah, there you go.
So what I remember from looking into it and watching some videos and reading about this, these two numbers, right? Which is elasticity or something, and elasticity of import demand, and I don't remember what this is and what it represents. I can't see it here readily. Yes, elasticity import prices with respect to tariffs. So it's 4 times 0.25, which is 1, isn't it?
Yeah.
So he's essentially, you can just say that this part of the formula isn't there, right? It's just this one.
Well, I guess
the
elasticity will change depending on what you're importing.
If it changes, but in their calculation when they did it, it didn't. So this is 1 times whatever this is, meaning that you can just strike this part of the formula. So it's really just, imports versus exports. Right?
Divided by imports?
Yes, right. So it's they've just made it fancy.
Very Greek. And very mathematical.
Yeah, no one's going to read this anyway, right? Or maybe it's one of the, it's one of the Doge guys did a chat GPT.
People are suspecting that if it was generated using AI, considering the kind of weird, some countries were included, other countries were not included, and some countries, I assume that they would have gotten, maybe they've done some rounding as well, because it's usually 10, 15 or up. But yeah, it's not really that important. It's just a kind of strange way to go about these things. And of course, many people have commented on that. And as to kind of, they ask the questions, what is the point, right? I wish I had the post here. But I think like Black Horse did a very good analysis where he just broke down like 3 different things that you could try to achieve using this kind of a tariff plan, and how they usually end up being mutually contradictory. Like some people believe that the point of these tariffs were to remove tariffs. So it's like the Thanos from the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So he used the Infinity Stones to destroy the Infinity Stones. So Trump is going to create true free trade around the globe by then using the tariffs to destroy all the tariffs, and finally you can have like a zero tariff policy. Of course, this is and the other thesis is that basically, okay, this is something that's done to try to reindustrialize the United States by incentivizing production internally. And I don't remember what the third one was. I mean, maybe it's about China and geopolitical security. But they're not, they're mutually contradictory in a sense. Like, either you want free trade, you're trying to basically destroy tariffs and renegotiate the kind of more freer deal that you can make more money of, or you want to reassure manufacturing. I mean, if it's you get even less tariffs, then I'm not really sure what the incentive is. Maybe the idea is that the Americans are stopping. They're not developing factories because they're being tariffed by these other Vietnam or whatever, these tinier countries. So
which just sort of like, I mean, economically is still doesn't quite make sense as long as globalism is still a thing. And you can watch actually, AA's and Dan's talk about this was actually really good, just for highlighting it felt like an old school AA video, just, bashing about economics. It was good.
Well, yeah, I think we're getting back to an economic world. I think I said it to you in the chat previously that I think a lot of the far right or the dissident right have been sort of stuck in 2020 for a while. And I don't think it's been a good thing, honestly. There's a lot of analysis and worldviews
we have to grow up, essentially.
Well, I mean, if you've worked with AI, they have this term called overfitting. But so you're trying to train an artificial intelligence to predict something, like say, like you're predicting the stock price of, or maybe like let's say the value of oil, for example, and you're using training data. Let's say if you only use training data from like the 2000 to 2001, the oil has like very special behavior in that period because of the lockdowns. And if you try to use that training data to predict what was happening in what's going to happen in the future, or what was happening, back testing in maybe the 90s or something, it's not going to work. And I feel like a lot of thinking, a lot of theory that's been produced has been just kind of based in the kind of lockdown, WEF globalist, vaccine terrorism worldview. Like that's just become sort of the baseline for a lot of analysis. And now that the world is moving away from that, you can sort of get back to economics again, which I think is quite preferable, to be honest. I think it's medical statistics is very tiresome to sit and sift through. I mean, that's neither here nor there, but yeah, like the old AA videos. Yeah, I mean, the video is really entertaining. Of course, I think it points to something that I
not just entertaining. It's I think it's very telling on Dan's part as well, right? Because he's sort of playing the pro MAGA side as well, and I think it was a good showcase of the split happening here, about sort of one side not understanding what the hell you're talking about, and the other one doing like 7 layers of acrobatics to explain why this is actually a good thing.
What I thought was interesting about that video, and the pattern that I've seen with other content creators, it's this term called like algorithmic capture or audience capture, in a sense, because if you are a YouTube creator or it's a content creator on some type of platform, you have to deal with the algorithm, and you can see quickly, just based on your metrics and how you're performing. And like say you have an interview show, for example, and you're bringing on guests, you can see some guests get like 2,000 views and other get 20,000. Maybe you get some that have like 100,000. And the algorithmic incentive to say bring on people, or just to sit and do like the 5D chess analysis of the stuff that Trump does, this is hot. Like this is super algorithmically optimized in the current environment. And I don't know if this is like an organic feature or if this is it's being manipulated, maybe a little bit of both. But it's like if you just want to get a certain audience, and you could just look at the comment section in that video where AA is discussing this stuff with Dan, essentially. Like they take Dan's side. They want to watch that video because they want to hear the 5D chess explanation for it, even though Trump pulled all the tariffs back. Like it's just blown up in 2 days.
Yeah.
It's blown up in 2 days, but it doesn't matter because they really want that. And I'm just seeing it in like every interview channel, is that's the kind of content that for that audience. I mean, if you're not doing 5D chess analysis, like
we've discussed earlier, like should we move the show closer to the start of the week, because that's where the interesting stuff happens, right? Because we stream on Thursday, we're usually at the end of the tail when it turns out nothing ever happens, right? But I think that's a strength ultimately, right? But it's not efficient if I want to make money on YouTube, right?
No, but I mean, that is something you're dealing with constantly. Like, and it's not just for like the MAGA crowds either. Like you can see it with some of the more kind of like liberal stuff, like say like Times Radio on YouTube, like that channel. That's like this liberal radio channel that you get these sort of Russia is collapsing headlines, or Xi Jinping. It's like it's just like 2 days until China collapses or something. That's kind of like the shittier version of that. Where
Yeah, and the other
what's his
one is
name,
like Ukraine is about to crumble any moment now. Right.
Yeah, but I think for the liberals is that they want to hear that Russia is going to collapse in like tomorrow, China is going to collapse tomorrow. These Joe Blogs, I think, is another guy that I follow on YouTube that has this, like, he has just optimized that formula. The content itself is not that offensive, but like every thumbnail is like Russia is finished, Xi Jinping is finished. It's like always 2 minutes to midnight before it's over. And like the content, he will just be going into some statistics about like the Russian interest rate or the demographics of China or something like that, which is like, okay, it wasn't that malignant, it wasn't that harmful, but how you get people's attention and the way that you have to game the algorithm is essentially play up these certain narratives that they really want to hear. But it does end up capturing you into a certain track, and like with some of these bigger creators, it's almost perverse. I mean, there's the algorithmic aspect, and there's also, I think, with like the Trump regime and the Trump admin being so personality based, all of the status that you're going to get out of it, all of the value that you get out of interacting with it is just going to be through praise and through this kind of trickle down personality cult. I don't know how else to explain it, and that's where you're seeing a lot of the the narratives that have been changing by the day. Is that in the beginning, okay, today they were running. Okay, yeah, the boomers are going to get it. Trump is doing the tariffs, and this is great because the boomers are getting fucked, and we're destroying Wall Street. Right? Trump is going to destroy Wall Street on behalf of Main Street. It's like that 4chan post. We're talking about, okay, Wall Street is done basically. Like only 10%, 90% of America's stock is owned by 10% of the population.
Themselves from the windows.
This is going to be like when you play Mario Party and like you get the Bowser dice, or you're going to get a reroll.
Oh yeah, the blue shell in Mario Kart.
Yeah, that's sort of how they present it. Of course, that considering that Trump pulled out of this, it just completely blows out that theory as well. I mean, maybe you can just bring up the maybe the Nasdaq index, composite index, the S&P 500 or the Dow Jones Industrial or something, so we could just do a little bit of chart analysis, because I think that's funny. Nasdaq composite, and I think you should do 1 year as the time frame. This is perfect, because here you can see it. So you're getting into March at the end there, and I mean, when you're looking at growth and decline in these charts, you're not just looking at it going up and down, but you're also looking at the speed at which it goes up and down, which is it's really like you can see the shock from the the global trade war event. You can see it so clearly happen there. Because, like, without getting too technical, because people who do chart analysis, they'll use calculus and all of these sort of engineering things like oscillators, in indicators. To I think you have to do like these at least a 6 month or the 1 year time frame to clearly see see how sloped it is, because that's what I think is fascinating about it. If you go back to maybe 6 month or 1 year time frame window. Imagine like if you're a skier, skiing along this kind of slope, like you're a kid, who's sitting in a car and you're bored and you're pretending that there's like some guy running a motorbike around the trees or something. You see just how much it falls instantly. Like it's not sloping like the other ups and downs of the graph here.
It's a crevice.
You see, it's sort of just the ups and downs are sort of they're sloping. It's starting flat, then it's starting to pick up, then it goes sort of a bit like a roller coaster, then it goes up, it goes flat again, then it falls. So it has like a sort of natural momentum. But with the announcement of these tariffs, it's just like a total fall off the hill here.
You could say it was over. And, now we're
certainly
back.
I mean, it's not just about people are saying that at the bottom point we're just back to the beginning of the year or something, or we're back to the beginning of last year, assuming that the growth is going to be linear anyway. But it's like not just the position on the graph, but it's kind of just the sloping of it, how hard the momentum went downwards, according to sort of the smart money. And of course, I know that this is like sales and purchases. It's not. It's not.
Gerald Rivera says Trump saved the economy.
Well, I mean,
he did it, guys. He saved us.
If you look at the bottom there, the bottom of that
It's
hole.
true though. Trump literally saved the world economy.
But yeah, the bottom of the hole there, when you reach when it crashes the first time and then it goes down a little bit further.
Yeah.
Like if you follow at the beginning of the crash here, I wish you could see my arrow a little bit there to the left, not at the bottom, but yeah, there. At this point, that movement from that to that little peak, this is when the MAGA accounts were running that sort of, well, the economy is flourishing again. But these memes were like,
oh, here
it's all green, like, oh look, the Nasdaq went up again or something, like,
oh
they,
no,
you know, they were at the sloping down. They were running kind of this kind of MAGA communist.
Oh, because it was
stuff
just
where,
like a 1 day sort of readjustment, right?
A one day kind of pullback because of,
which is natural
I mean,
when you have like a big dip like that. You would have
well,
like
yes,
a
because some people
recovery.
are shorting these positions and they made a lot of money, so they're selling, and that's why it's going up again. But it would have continued to go down. I'm pretty convinced of that as well, and it is continuing to go down. But this is like just a reaction to, okay, everybody's being tariffed to only China is being tariffed, but that's still going to have a downward trend. If you're seeing like by the
not to mention that just the volatility of the past couple of days is going to make people sell, right?
Well, I mean, that doesn't help. I mean, every move, I mean, you could sort of, you know, okay, we're putting the tariffs on, putting the tariffs off, and the market is reacting to that. But there's also kind of an overarching unease that's introduced there that is going to lead to economic uncertainty, because like these stock market movements are just kind of they're reactions to public information. Like if you've read, you know, like Dow theory, essentially, you know, all public information is accounted for, and the smart money, as soon as they get more public information, the graph moves in one direction or the other. But as the long-term effect of this sort of uncertainty will be that, you know, factories won't be opened, jobs won't be created, and that will turn out, you know, financial statements from the Labor Bureau of Statistics and so on, that will give people an even worse impression of the economy, that it's going to lead it further down. So I did say that when we talked about the economy. I'm not an investment advisor, but yeah, don't buy the dip. I guess the only people who made money are the people who actually bought that little dip there, and now there's being people are looking into this as some kind of you know, insider trading, essentially, because people suspect that Trump might have told people beforehand that he was going to put the tariffs away. You could have made a lot of money.
You could have made a lot of money
if you bought the dip there, but you'd have to sell again.
Nancy Pelosi's husband make? Hang on. Can I see that? Is it too early? I guess it's like 90 days or something.
It would have been interesting to see, but I don't have it here. But there were some people who were, let's see if I can find it. I tried to bookmark. People who were noting that people were buying, you know, options essentially at that bottom here. Like they're I don't know if it's call option, put options. Let's see, unusual whales. I have a Twitter thread about it. I'll post it to you in the private chat.
Sure, you can look at this meanwhile.
It should be in the private chat now. You can
Truly
look at
fantastic stuff. All right, what's this here? Unusual whales. All right, I think people knew of the tariff pause and traded it beforehand. You can see before Trump posted buy on Truth Social's, trader opened QQQ and TQQQ and SPY calls. Right before the news, someone opened the SPY 509 calls expiring today. Those calls are up 2,100% in 1 hour. You can see all volume was literally open today. That little green arrow. You can see all volume is new opening volume, not only the 0 days, but also the weekly on Triple Q and TQQQ. This is especially odd given the IVR on these was around 82 this morning with IV through the roof. The traders really wanted to trade directionally. Using unusual whales net premium, you can see people have been loading calls for trading for a reversal. So someone were preparing for the things to bounce back.
Yes, and I mean for those not in the know, I think, you know, calls are basically, you know, it's options, right? You're just buying essentially a position that you're expecting it to go up, but you're also hedging. You're paying a certain amount that you can still retract that position. If it doesn't happen, then you can get your money back essentially for 1 day. That's when they're talking about like a 1 day. The option expires after 1 day, so they expected something to happen within 1 day. It does
which is
indicate
an
that
incredibly short amount of time to make that decision on. Of course, we were in a short time frame with the whole he was going to wait until like 9th of April or something, but this is a big bet to make on a 1 day without having any insider information.
Because I mean the more days you get the option for, the more expensive it is. Like, in the smaller your margins get. So they were sort of just betting on it to go straight back up again, and they bought a sort of an insurance for like a 24-hour time frame. So, but yeah, as far as I understood, like the reason that Trump pulled out of this, I mean, you could look at the article because then he talks about various things, but it seems like the consensus is that people in Japan were dropping bonds, which is it goes back to the 4chan.
I mean, they were talking about allying with China to drop bonds, right?
4chan, that 4chan copy pasta thing where they're talking about like Trump is going to tank Wall Street and refinance the debt at a lower level, assuming that because when stocks go down, people buy bonds, like they buy American debt instead, that you get at a decent interest rate. But what you saw instead, that people were divesting from stocks and bonds at the same time. So they just pulled it back again, because now I think they sort of screwed the pooch on this. I
think that's what really scared them, is when people started selling the bonds, right?
And it was Japan as well, because I mean China has a lot of bonds. They could have sold them, but it's like one of the friendlier countries that are starting to consider dropping them. So most of the bonds are now held by China. Is a big holder of them, but Japan is the biggest. Switzerland is in the top, and then you have some other European countries as well that hold them. So apparently this is something that you can do to pressure Trump, if it ever comes to that, because I don't know if they're ever going to coordinate this, but and they're also risking just nuking themselves by screwing the reserve currency. But I mean, who knows?
But it's China, though. Like, China is the kind of nation who would do that, right?
Yeah, but they didn't. That's got what's surprising. It was like
no,
Japan
I mean when it when the time comes, right?
Yeah. Well, a couple of billion people to win over the U.S. Empire is a fair price to pay for them, right? Fair price to pay. Well, I think people are underestimating how symmetrical the relationship is. Not symmetrical in terms of like trade balance, but in terms of dependency. Is that the Chinese are also dependent on the U.S.
But what I'm saying is that China, as a culture and as a nation and as a people, is much more willing to just let people die.
At least the rulers are. I think the people themselves are just kind of pacified or depoliticized in a sense. I don't think they even have the idea that they should have an opinion on that at all. So I think it's easy to sort of romanticize the Chinese as like they're like these stalwart, blood and soil nationalists.
No, I don't mean that. I mean they literally just don't value human life on the same level that we do, and their leaders are willing to, as I said, if a couple of billion dies, then that's the price of empire, right?
Yeah, isn't that the billions must die, and they have like the Chinese emperor?
Yeah, that's the history meme, right? Is that like, in 500 BC, the Han dynasty defeats the Jing dynasty, and 7 billion people die, right? Let's see here. I'm gonna read from the article. Customs break came from the heart, says Trump. Is that really true? Let's see here. Wednesday's drama ended in a 90-day postponement of high customs walls against a number of countries. The only exception is China, which raised the customs wall to 125%. But what was going on was still unclear. On Thursday morning, Nutrition Minister Cecilia Mirset said that they were going to working to confirm which tariffs apply to Norway. She wrote that it was demanding to get the confirmation from the administration. On Thursday afternoon, the White House reported that Norway will receive 10% tariffs for 90 days ahead and not 15%. The minister said that the situation is still unpredictable. US President Donald Trump announced the break on his own platform, Truth Social. Over the last few days, I've thought about it, Trump from the Oval Office said on Wednesday. He further said that the customs break was decided early in the morning. We had no need for or access to lawyers. We wrote it from the heart, right? It was written from the heart, and I think it's well written too. Such a Trump thing to say. We had no need for lawyers. We wrote it from the heart. It was written from the heart, and I think it's well written too, said Trump. He also said they don't want to hurt countries that don't deserve it. But is that true? I mean, I don't know, dude. You kind of like nuked random countries that for some reason is trading a lot with you, right?
Well, yeah, the rhetoric changes from like paragraph to paragraph. The EU basically showed up with their tail between their legs and said that we're going to cut all the tariffs, and he said it wasn't good enough because they wanted trade balance parity. The sort of Peter Navarro stuff. Like, European Union has to buy pickup trucks and chlorinated chicken at an amount that is balancing out their trade, while also just paying for their software. So, of course, that wasn't acceptable. So the EU got ready for targeted tariffs, essentially, which is something they've done in the past as well. That they don't just do blanket tariffs; they generally target, people politically with them, like they did with Jeb Bush and certain states that they think are closer to the president.
Yeah. Was it really, quote, from the heart? According to New York Times, there was economic unrest, particularly a rapid rise in the interest rates on American bonds, which led to Trump's turnaround. The newspaper refers to 4 unnamed sources with, quote, direct knowledge of Trump's decision. Okay, I'm going to try to keep doing the Trump voice just because on our last video, or a couple of videos ago, there was one guy who said that he, even though especially my Trump impersonation fucking sucks. I mean, I think I do some good ones. I can do a decent Jordan Peterson, but he said that he loves that I'm trying to do voices whenever I talk to people. So I'm doing this for you. I don't remember the name. Sorry. I followed the bond market. People were starting to get a little uncomfortable. Behind the scenes, several Trump advisors feared panic in the financial market, that they would lose control, which would be devastating to the economy. Several of the advisors, including Finance Minister Scott Bessent, which is the guy who looks like... did you see my post on X? Because I think it was GTK, Guide to Culture, Frody, posted about this guy, and he looks like the mayor from The Grinch. Like one of those like rat people.
yeah. Frody made the comment about him. I haven't been able to stop laughing at it actually. What was it again?
So,
it's like he looks like a sort of insufferable kind of gay submissive guy.
Let me see if I can find the post. One moment. I don't think it's that far off. Yeah. GTK Radio says Bessent is the least charismatic man I've seen in my entire life. He has that nervous GAY insecure autiste vibe. Please don't slap me, kind sir. And it's true when you like one thing is viewing photos of him, but he has a clip there of him talking, and it's very, very effeminate. Let's see here. Several of the advisors, including Finance Minister Scott Bessent and Vice President J.D. Vance, wanted more focus on isolating China. After Trump announced the turnaround on social media, he sent his advisors out to explain it all away. They tried to portray it as if it's all been a brilliantly planned negotiation strategy drawn from Trump's book, The Art of the Deal. Finance Minister Scott Bessent denied that the bond market had driven this change. Trump came out and contradicted what the finance minister and spokeswoman Carolyn Levitt had just said. Trump, Jesus Christ! I know this paper is probably slanted against Trump, but the video's got to be out there, right? And this sounds like classic Trump, right? Trump referred. Could this actually be like a problem considering his last term? Is that he's older, right? Maybe he doesn't really have all of the energy to be on the front lines anymore. So he keeps sending out like this Carolyn Levitt woman, right? But they have no coordination. So he just like comes out and freehands it after her, basically contradicting
I do
everything.
get that impression as well that he is less involved. I don't know if I mentioned this. We talked about the Signal scandal, like with the signal chat and the the military information that was shared on the app. But yeah, well, I mean, to just to recall that it's what is it, Pete Hegseth and JD Vance, a lot of these top guys in the Trump admin who were in like a chat group on the app Signal where they were discussing bombing the Houthis essentially because of the shipping line problems. And there's a lot of comments about like the stuff JD Vance said and what Hegseth said, and they added this journalist by accident. But what I thought was the most interesting thing is that Donald Trump wasn't in that chat room, which it sort of just tells me that he's probably not as involved in things anymore. That he's just kind of he's old, probably more tired, and doesn't really want to do that much hands-on stuff. Because I mean, not just that he wasn't writing anything in the chat room, he wasn't in the chat room. he didn't have access.
He wasn't to
the messages, so he couldn't.
At the top, it was kind of like POTUS has sanctioned this, right? Someone said or something.
So,
right?
They were talking about like Biden with using the auto pen or something. I suspect that you're having a similar.
Javier Olivia has to leave. I'm sorry, my guy. I see your name all the time.
Yeah.
Hopefully you'll be able to watch the VOD. Let's see.
But yeah, the fact that he wasn't included is that he's sort of they're at the same time like he is the centerpiece. He is the most popular guy in that government, and he is the president. So they have to kind of follow his lead when he like JD Vance said, like what the president desires essentially. So I mean it's interesting because I the way I understand it is that the Putin regime works a little bit in the same way. Not that Putin is as old or sort of as incoherent, but that a lot of the direction that Putin gives to his bureaucrats is very kind of, it's a bit obscure and kind of hard to interpret. So they have to just do their best to kind of turn it into policy. But with Trump, it's sort of, he's just kind of not as on the ball as I think JD Vance and some of these other guys are in terms of like who are our friends and who said what and kind of like just like when he came out to congratulate the CDU, for example. And
he's not in the group chats, like.
He's not updated on the memes. He's just golfing, and they have to kind of try to make it look as coherent as possible. But I don't think Trump is really on top of it as much. So the coordination messaging stuff has always been an issue. This was a problem in the campaign as well. It's just now they're not. You can't really contrast it against something else. You don't have like the sort of pantsuit DEI kind of ethnic woman to point to. Like
that's true. Yeah.
this is the alternative.
Yeah, you can't like say, well, it could be worse because you don't have a choice, right?
No, well, you just have to deal with it, and you have to you stare it down and just look at this for what it is, and not try to paint it up as anything else. And then you can really start to see some of the cracks, especially in terms of messaging discipline, which was completely. I talked about this, that the messaging discipline was just completely broken during the campaign, even though it didn't seem to matter that much. But you're seeing it now when you're they're communicating to their base, like they're kind of the based MAGA guys. They love this, and that's fine. And you can get their votes, and you can get the people who are sort of depoliticized and who just don't like trans stuff, and get them to vote for you. But when you have to communicate to the entire world, many who are not on the same page, then this messaging problem becomes really bad. And I think that's what we're seeing. But yeah, let's just finish the article. I think we're way too long. Maybe we won't even be able to do the drug thing.
Probably not. Yeah. Interest rates that could have cost the United States dearly. Hang on a moment. We have a comment from... I didn't even know you could comment on X. Well, I think this is like the first time. Fart from X says, all I know is that we're now stuck with this Davos sanctions-based globalism abomination. Bringing home the dollar isn't possible short of an act of God. Sure, but you have to remember that, you guys are the ones who put the dollar out there on purpose to build your empire, and just bringing it back is probably gonna implode you guys. That's just the fact of the situation, and there has to be a better way to do this than economically nuking yourself. There has to be some more tact.
Yeah, I don't see any alternative to the dollar. I mean, people are trying constantly. That's what the Bitcoin project is about, and the BRICS dollar and all of these libertarian types.
Yeah, exactly. And none of it pans out because the dollar is still the one, right?
It never works. So people are stuck with it essentially until they can come up with something else. And transitioning off it's going to be really painful, even though they don't like Trump.
Guys in the chat are loving fart, so you have a huge fan base over on YouTube. Okay, Trump said he had been following the interest rate on American bonds with a 10-year maturity. It had shot in the air over the past few days. This is an interest rate that is described as the most important in the world. A low interest rate on American bonds may eventually lead to cuts in the US key rate. It would also make it cheaper for Trump to refinance American government debt. About a quarter of the debt is to be refinanced this year. Quarter, but also like a bunch of Dan brought this up as well, as like a huge bit of the like COVID debt is coming up as well, which is going to be a big hit. Trump said he had stayed convinced after watching an interview with. He had become convinced after watching an interview with Jamie Dimon on TV channel Fox on Wednesday morning. Dimon is the managing director of J.P. Morgan. So, what J.P. Morgan is that Irish?
Well, it is one of these larger banks, but you have the meme with the Irish bank manager guys.
Let me get an early life check on
I don't think that
Dimon.
Morgan was an early lifer. I can check that.
He's Greek. He's Greek. Interesting. Let's see here. During the interview, Dimon warned that the United States is likely entering a recession. Economic recession as a result of customs policy. Quote, I think it could get worse if there is no progress here, Dimon said. He urged the president to give Bessent time to make deals. At the same time, he said that a little tariff is good for increasing trade. Finance Minister Bessent gets a little glory for getting Trump to turn around. But according to the New York Times, it was basically the fear of financial crisis that caused Trump to pull the brakes. Unlike the crisis of 2008 and the pandemic of 2020, a financial crisis now would be only due to a single man. Billionaire and Trump supporter Bill Ackman asked Trump to pause customs for 90 days. If not, there would be economic nuclear winter, he warned Sunday night. Republicans and others in the Trump camp had also begun to murmur. Following Trump's announcement Wednesday, Ackman was quickly out, saying that this was brilliantly done by Trump, as taken out of the book The Art of the Deal. Okay, buddy. This is the book Trump.
About the world that we live in and how I feel like social media is just kind of compressing everything in a way where, like, previously you had some ideas about hierarchies and people who are higher and lower. And now everybody is just a kind of a social media shitposter, from the lowest troll to the people who are high up, who are like billionaires talking to Donald Trump. And they all sound equally stupid on social media. I hate this on some level. I hate that like everybody is just sharing slop now. So much of the mystique, goes out of it in a sense. But it was funny at least to watch the billionaire cope on X in the days where the markets were just going down, because you talk about like
kiss the feet.
10% of people who own 90% of the stock. Well, that's those guys, right? Who supported Trump as like who sort of seeing Trump as a possibility to increase their wealth, not to crash it. So I think there are some unhappy customers in the camp.
On Wednesday, Trump urged people to sit quietly when the market opened. Soon after, he wrote that this is an amazing time to buy on Truth Social. Then came the customs break, and American shares rose up. Among other things, NASDAQ index rose with 12.6%, which is the largest daily increase since 2001. But Democrats and experts are skeptical of Trump's turnaround. Quote, how is it not a manipulation of the market? Asked Congressman Mike Levin. Jameson Greer, Trump's chief advisor and negotiator on international trade, was grilled in Congress about this. Greer, black, what the hell is going on here? One moment. Greer responded then that there was no manipulation, but an attempt to, quote, restore the global trading system. This is, which is literally like the SpongeBob, we did it, Patrick, we saved Bikini Bottom meme, right? Minister of Industry Mir Seth says that it's good that the tariffs are not as high as announced last week. This is for Norway, but that the future is unclear. The situation is still unpredictable with a lot of uncertainty from day to day. So that's it.
A funny side effect of this is actually the tanking of like the oil price, which is something you've probably noticed at the pump if you have a car or something. But,
yeah, I've seen the prices.
They've actually gone down, which is sort of I did not expect that. But, I mean, there are other factors as well, including like increased oil production from Saudi Arabia and some of these other OPEC countries that are producing more oil than usual. Norway also pumping out more oil, so the prices is going down. The problem is that like this, the barrel price for crude, it was sort of almost touching $50, right? Which is it's really rough for Russia, when like Russia was like one of the countries that were not touched by the sanctions. We didn't talk about that last time, but Russia was not on the list, including North Korea and some of these countries that are involved in that. You consider that alliance more or less, and people were talking on X about how Russia is not going to be touched by this, so they're so used to being sanctioned now that they're not really bothered by all this kind of trade war nonsense. But the thing is that if you're crashing the market and you're also crashing the oil price, I mean, if the barrel price goes to 40, then it's sort of done. And Trump made that promise. I think he talked about it during the campaign as well. If he was able to get the oil price down, it could end the war in Ukraine. And I was looking at it and thinking that, okay, this is like maybe a possible silver lining. That he accidentally tanked the Russian economy by doing these tariffs, but when he pulled back, the price went up a little bit again, right? But it is an interesting development, because when Russia invaded Ukraine in 2022, the price per barrel was like 110 or something, and now it's like pushing 60-50-ish. So it's financing the war effort is going to get rough when you're reliant on oil and natural gas exports. Oh, okay.
Yep. I think that sums it up. We won't have time to talk about drugs this week, but maybe we'll have it back on next week.
Maybe we could give a little teaser if it's still if the world hasn't ended next week or something. I see if I could find a tweet here with the statistic.
Sure thing. You did point me to the Today YouGov. You sent a link earlier, 1 in 4 Americans. Is that the link you're into?
No, it's not that one actually, because it's a bit of a weave, as Donald Trump says. Let's see if I can find. I'll post the tweet, which was supposed to be like my entry point into this.
I'll check the chat while we wait. Oh, here it is.
It's in the private chat here.
Yeah, I see it. Never mind, I'm bringing it up right now. Let's see here.
You could just get the picture up here, and it's from YouGov, and it's sort of like mapping out, perceptions, or sort of like the popularity of Donald Trump among various age demographics in the United States. And you see, you have like the Zoomers, the Millennials, the Xers at the bottom left, and then the Boomers in the bottom right. And like they go through sort of similar movements, except for like the Gen X guys, who are really kind of the outliers here, which I found very interesting. It's like the Zoomer and Millennial graphs are kind of like the same graphs, only it seems like the Zoomers are a little bit more emotional about the whole thing.
Sure.
So they get very happy and very upset, and the Boomers are now gradually losing faith.
Some guys go on a real journey. What is this, 18 to 29-year-olds?
Yeah,
some guys have gone on
Trump.
A real journey around like 24 to 26.
and next week I hate Trump.
Yeah.
So, and the Boomers have just kind of like gradually slipped. They were positive to Trump coming in. That's interesting, and very happy in the beginning. And as he's been doing like some of these more kind of austerity stuff and killing their 401ks. I guess they've sort of fallen out of favor with him. But
that's literally it, though. The 19 to 29-year-olds. You can literally map the "it's over, we're back" moments on these guys.
Yeah, that's the reality they live in. But the Xers are the exception here. I mean, they have some of the same wave movements, but they actually are very consistently supported him, and like they were skeptical when he came in, but they sort of like they seem to be liking the stuff that Trump is doing, and that's why I wanted to get into this kind of drug stuff and talk about like the American Gen Xer guys, because like I think these are the biggest podcast consumers. Probably. Would you think so as well? If you look like who's listening to
I mean, you're old enough to sort of quote be interested in it and not be more of the TikTok generation, I guess. But you're also young enough to have the technical know-how to suss it out, right? To be early.
Yeah. So this is what I'm thinking about the guys who, and you sort of think that it's like, okay, because these are like the Haywoods and the Quinoneses and like the all these kind of Jack Posebics and these types on X. This is Elon and all these types are like terminally online Warhammer 40K, political Christianity, recent divorce where the wife is like trans, their kids. So there's just so much going on with this generation. That's what I wanted to sit and talk about, like what's going on with American Gen Xers in a sense, because they really are kind of an outlier compared to
it's interesting
to the rest of them, and they are also
because it's such a stark difference in this specific generation.
Yeah, this is what you get when you watch Fight Club 100 times on repeat. You can't wait to just relive that moment when they blow up all the buildings. And I think that's part of it, but maybe we'll get to do that next time, unless there's probably been 100 new news stories.
I'll try my best to see if because I've been reading I've been reading a book called Anti-Intellectualism in the American Life by was it Richard Hofstadter or something? Richard Hofstadter, yeah. Which is a very interesting book. Which it's not like, oh, this explains everything, but I'm trying to understand the Americans in order to what's the meme? I need to understand you in order to insult you better. But just to make sense of the split that's happening here. Okay. Thank you everyone for watching. Thank you for listening. We're going to be back next week, of course, as always. And maybe
it's
we'll
Easter
talk
next
about
week, so it'll be comfortable.
Oh, that's true. Are we going to skip
I don't know if you're
it?
going away.
Or...
I'm available. So
yeah, I think we're going to be here next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we'll see. Maybe we'll do something Easter inspired. We'll see. Anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. You can follow me on Twitter. You can follow Ludwig Path on Twitter as well. And we'll see you guys next week. And have a great rest of your evening and a great weekend. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.